Hey folks, today we're covering Tinto Talks 75, and today Johan's going to be going over some of the changes they've made to the game based on the feedback that we've given, and then also the gameplay that they've obviously been playing as well as they are producing the game, and seeing like what works, what doesn't work. There's a variety of changes talked about today. Some of them are directly gameplay, some of them are UI changes, and we're going to go through all of those in this quick video. The first thing he wants to call out here is that some of the changes they've made can't really be shown well in one of these Tinto Talks. They're going to do a video, it sounds like, in the future, showing how the performance has changed and also how they've improved the AI, since they say here some influencers got to play this game previously. I don't know who he's talking about. And then also through their gameplay, they've realized like these areas of the game do need improvements. I will say, when I got to play the game, this isn't really a secret, everyone talked about this, that the performance did get worse the more and more you played. So it sounds like they have made some improvements around that. But he does say it sounds like we're going to get a video around that instead of it being in a Tinto Talks dev diary. I guess it's a lot easier to show that, you know, they could show before and after performance and really like how much quicker the game runs, or I guess like how smoothly it runs as well. So we will look out for that in the future. Anyway, let's get into the changes here. So the first thing they're going to talk about is advances and forming countries. So one of the ways many of you enjoyed playing EU4 was forming new countries and getting a new set of national ideas. Previously in EU5, country-specific advances were locked behind being a certain tag. Now with these changes, you'll be able to keep them when you form a new country, and you'll be able to research the unique advances from the tag you came from, as well as the new one. So this is a good change. I think it makes sense as well. If you're like Sweden and you form Scandinavia, which is something they're going to talk about in a second, why would you forget the ability to learn the things that the Swedish would have learned if you just stayed as Sweden? I guess they looked at it maybe as like a trade-off, like I'm losing those, but I'm gaining the Scandinavian unique advances. I think this way works better. You're not like losing things that you would have learned anyway. It kind of feels better, I think, this way around. The other major change, though, as part of this, and really limit like how much you can stack advances, you're no longer going to be able to form multiple countries of the same tier. So they give an example here. So if you're playing as Sweden, which is a tier 2 tag, you can form Scandinavia, which is a tier 3 tag, but you can't form Denmark, which is a different tier 2 tag. If you're coming from like Crusader Kings, think of this as like, well, if I own England, I take over enough of Scotland, I'm going to make the Kingdom of Scotland. I own both of those titles. In EU5, you wouldn't be able to do that. Well, technically, I guess you might be able to, because this is talking about tiers, which isn't exactly, you know, kingdoms and empires, because as they're going to cover in a second, different empires can be different tiers, so it doesn't exactly work. But if you're trying to get your head around it, that's kind of how it's going to work. As they said, if you're Sweden, you can form Scandinavia, which is an empire, but you wouldn't be able to form another kingdom, which is Denmark. But I guess if there was a kingdom that was tier 3, you would be able to do that. Anyway, that is roughly how it's going to work. They do say if you do form Scandinavia, which is tier 3, you can actually make a better empire. You can make the Roman Empire, because that is a tier 4 country tag. So you can have an empire and then create an empire on top of it, but you can't create two empires that are like the same level. I imagine like Scandinavia and Britannia, you couldn't form both and then get the advances from both of them. I think this is all around balancing. If you were able to stack all the advances from these different tiers, you would just get crazy good the more land that you took. All these different advances. I think this way is a good way to do it, though. You can see in the next screenshot is going to show us here the Unified Scandinavia Advance. This will give you 25% crown power, and then you can research this once you have Unified Scandinavia. The next thing they've changed is subjects, so you will need to manage your subjects' loyalty more carefully now, as they will not fight wars if they are disloyal to you, and they will also make separate peace treaties with your enemies if they are disloyal enough. So I guess even if you start a war and they're loyal, if they become disloyal during the war, they might just nope out of that war and say, do you know what, I'm not interested in helping you anymore, I'm going to make peace and I'm going to run away from this battle. Another cool change they've made is that you can now instruct your loyal subjects to do certain things in your wars. If they're disloyal, they might not do this, but you can say like, please do one of these options, and then they will try and do that for you. They have got them listed out here, so you can do normal. This is obviously just let them do whatever they want. Aggressive, this will make your subjects start doing sieges and chase enemy units. Supportive, they will just stick around your armies and help your units. Passive, they will do low risk actions like blockading and also defend friendly territory. I guess they might run after an army if it is particularly weak against them or something like that. And then the last one is defensive. As it says, just very defensive. They will not look for enemies, but if they come into your allied territory, they will then chase after them and kind of fight them off. You can kind of see that in the next UI. This is an updated version of this. You can see all the different subjects here of France, and then you can see normal status for their military. You'll be able to click on this and change what they're doing. This is quite a cool UI, actually. We haven't seen this for a while. You can see the different colors now, vassal, appendage. You can see how much they like you, how much gold they've got, how much gold they're making, how big their army is. And then I think you could also see their loyalty as the second kind of column of information there as well. Do let me know, though, in the comments if I am incorrect with that. I think this UI looks really nice now. There are still some improvements I would make. I think some of the colors kind of clash a little bit. But overall, I think this is an improvement to this UI to what we've seen previously. I do like kind of how it looks. There are still some minor changes I would make before launch, but we will see what happens before the game does come out. The next thing he's going to talk about is Bribing Estates. So one thing many people mentioned during the dev diaries is that there was no way to directly affect estate satisfaction. Of course, the easy solution, and very thematically as well, is to just bribe people. So a simple bribe for a temporary boost in estate satisfaction has been added. The amount of cost is based on the economic base of your country and the tax base of the estate. You also have to remember that this is very temporary and it will soon go back to the equilibrium that it should be. You can see that in the next UI, bribe the estate. Now, we've kind of seen this in previous dev diaries, but we never got the tooltip. But you can see that now. Give ducats to temporarily improve the estate satisfaction of the nobles in this example. You can see this will cost you 460 gold, which is a lot of gold. They do only get 10% estate satisfaction, and again, they then get that gold as well, so then they can invest this into buildings or whatever they want to do as an estate. Let me know what you think about this. I think it kind of makes sense. I generally don't like, and if you've watched the channel for a while, you'll know this, I don't really like where you can press a button and just like immediately get something. This is more of like how older Paradox games work. They've kind of got away from this recently, but this is like one of these buttons where you can just press it and I just magically get 10% estate satisfaction. It does, as they say, kind of thematically work because obviously people were bribed all the time in the past. You know, many people still these days. So it does kind of work in that system. I just don't really like these things where like maybe they're going to rebel very quickly. Maybe you need to pass a certain law or something and you just go, well, I've got a lot of money. I'll just bribe them, do what I want to do. Yes, they will very quickly go back to normal, but I can kind of cheese the mechanics in some way by doing this. Again, as we can see, it is very expensive, so maybe it's fine. Let me know what you think in the comments. I just generally don't like these buttons where you can press something and you just get something that kind of negates how other systems work in some ways. But anyway, I'm sure it's fine. It'll get balanced at launch. It is very expensive, so that does limit how often you can use it anyway. The next thing they're going to talk about is construction centers. Another bit of feedback they've received is that playing Tour was very limited in the simple fact that every location can only queue one building at a time, so you can only build, well, one building at a time. And then in mid to late game, the severely favored countries that had more locations over those who had fewer. I will say for this one, isn't that how it's supposed to work? Like if you're playing tall, isn't that intentionally one of the bad sides of that you can't build as much because you have less land and you have to like slowly build up, but then ultimately you build up those modifiers so much you can play tall and have a really good time as like the Netherlands or Portugal maybe or something like that. Maybe not prime examples of tall countries, but you know what I mean. Kind of stay where you are and then just build your realm up and do other things rather than expand yourself. That is how I would think this would work, and it is how it was working, but they have made some changes here. I'm not sure I 100% agree with them. I think this could snowball pretty badly, but anyway, let's talk about the changes. So they had previously developed code for constructing things in parallel with shipyards. They had covered that previously. You could build like 3 ships at a time if you have really good shipyards. So they've added this system to recruiting regiments and building buildings. So barracks now will allow you to build 2 regiments at a time in the same location, and conscription centers will allow you to create 6 units at the same time in the same location. So this allows you to really build armies quicker, especially later in the game. Again, it kind of works. I guess if you have a very tall country, you could say there's a lot of condensed people there. There's a lot of industry going on. So they would be able to just do more of the same thing rather than just being limited to 1 unit. So I guess it kind of makes sense, but I don't know. We'll have to see how this plays out. And then the other thing they're going to talk about is buildings, roads, and other civil constructions. They've decided to add this system where they're going to have a new building that they're going to talk about in a second. So first of all, cities can always have 2 civil constructions at the same time compared to the usual 1 for towns and rural locations. I think that actually makes sense. Obviously, cities are bigger. They would have more industry there. They'd be able to do more building. So that one I'm kind of okay with. But more importantly, as they say here, is a new building called a construction center. You can see that on the screen at the moment. You'll gain access to this during the Age of Discovery via an advance, and then each level of this construction center allows another building to be built at the same time in the same location. The amount of levels you can build this up is based on your progress, your advances, all those kind of things. So as I said, you can see that on the screen, this is a construction center, infrastructure building. This is currently adding +1 construction capacity, and then you can get like +2, +3, +4. So then you can build 4 buildings at the same time, same location. I just worry that this is gonna kind of snowball for tall countries. Like, if they have this as like +6, like surely they can just have 6 buildings building, and then another 6, and then another 6. The weird thing is actually, and I only just thought about this, is that if you're playing wide, you can still build these. These aren't limited to just tall countries. So then you could build like 6 as wide. Doesn't this just make playing wide even better? I'm not too sure this actually fixes anything. Sure, tall countries can have more buildings, but then wide countries can also have more buildings because they're not limited in building these. Maybe this would be better if it was behind a certain advance, or maybe you had to take a decision or something which would limit your expansion but allow you to have these buildings. I guess that kind of gamifies it a little bit too much, even though we are playing a video game. Let me know what you think though. I think this just kind of will snowball, because then you could build, as I said, like 6 buildings in the same location. Then you get all those bonuses, then you can build another 6 buildings, and another 6, and another 6. Well, I guess you won't be building another 6, but you could upgrade 6 buildings at the same time, or something like that. I think it has the potential to just snowball really badly. I guess they'll play it and see, and then balance it before the game does come out. The next thing they want to talk about is just some general UI improvements. Everything we see for the rest of this dev diary is in some way related to the UI getting better, which is something we have talked about on the channel, and something we have seen improvements with in the Tinto dev diaries, and they're going to talk about some of them here. So the first thing they're going to talk about is the diplomatic UI, and there are 2 major changes here. First of all, there is now a list of known countries, which has been revised into what they're calling cards. I'll put this up on the screen now so you can see. What they're talking about is, if you look there, like the Mamluks, which they were talking about last week, it has like this box, and everything in there is what they're calling a card. And you'll see later on, this is then replicated elsewhere in the UI, which makes it very easy to like know where buttons are going to be. I do like what they're doing here, but this is what they've changed. You can see here the known countries. As you can see, it is 4, 5, 7, 10, 13. That is their great power score. And obviously you don't know some of the people between there. So like, who's level 6? Who knows? You'll find out in the future. After France, well, who's 8 and 9? You'll have to find those in the future and see who they are. So again, I think this is a nice UI. They have made some improvements here. I do like these cards and like how that kind of gold edge of the UI kind of looks. I don't know what to call it, but you know what I mean. You can see it around like the Duchy of Bavaria, that kind of like gold looking bit around that bar. I think that looks quite nice. Bringing it back, I think, a little bit more to the EU4 UI and less of this like brown and blue kind of, I'm not going to say basic UI, but you know what I mean. The UI hasn't looked fantastic up to now, and I think this is the slow improvement of it. As I've always said through all the Tinto talks, the UI is generally the last thing to get improved, because then the team know like where things are going to be, what they need to make UIs for, what they need to make it look nice, rather than if you do it first, well then you're changing all these UIs and you've kind of wasted all that time. So we will see improvements before launch, and I think going through this, you will see some of them as well. The other thing they want to show off here, and again, it is very similar to EU4 in some ways. You can see the name, you can see the flag, you can see their opinion of you, how much trust they have, how many favors, how big your spy network is. And then you can obviously declare war on the right-hand side, that red button. If you're going to go to war, you can just press it here, declare war on them. You're not having to dig into another UI just to find the same information. So I think overall, I like this. At a glance, you can see countries, how much they like you, how much they owe you in favors, if you want to declare war, what your spy network is. I think this works out quite well. Do let me know what you think though. The next thing they're going to talk about is the diplomatic UI. They've made some changes here so you can have more information kind of in the same UI to make it a little bit more easy to take actions on a specific country. You can see that here, and again, that kind of card UI that they talked about earlier. You can see that at the top, the Kingdom of Hungary, it has that same UI layout that the previous one did. So you can see the name of it, the flag, what rank they are, and again, how much they like you, favors, and it looks exactly the same. I like this because then you get used to where buttons are going to be, as I said, and that's going to help you play the game quicker or just get used to the UI that little bit faster. And then you can see all the other information here as well. I will say, I think there's a lot going on still in this UI. Do we really need to know that they're a monarchy, that they are land-based, that they are a tier 3 country? that could kind of be hidden off in a pop-up UI or something like that. Do we really need to see like how much power each of the estates have? Do you need to know that at a glance? I'd say probably not. I'm sure some of you will say in the comments you do, but I think that could go away from here as well. Maybe that entire bar there with like the stats and like what the traits the ruler has and things, maybe that would be like further down and then would like pop up if you hover over it or something, just to kind of clean this up. I think there's just a lot going on, as we've seen in other UIs. You can see the ruler, their wife, their child, all these different things here as well. And then further down, what they're talking about here, on the left-hand side, you can see the diplomatic things they've got. So you can see which IOs they're in. You can see they're at war with somebody. You can see they're allied with somebody. You can see that they have casus belli on certain places. And then on the right-hand side, very similar to EU4, but it looks like this starts like collapsed, is friendly actions, and then you would click on that, and then the 13 friendly actions that you can do would then populate below it, and then you can choose it. And then obviously the same for like covert actions. This will then pop out if you click on it. I think this just condenses the UI a little bit, so it isn't just a massive list of things. If you play EU4, that's how it looks. It's literally like all of these listed out, and a lot of them grayed out because you can't do them. In this case, it's just all condensed up. And then if you come into here, if you're coming into Hungary and saying like, why is this French person ruling it? You can see, you know, subject actions. Maybe I want to do something with those and see how that plays out. So anyway, I think this is an improvement. I do like the right-hand side of it. Again, with that kind of like gold look on the UI. The left-hand side, I'm not too fond of these brown boxes that they have in a lot of places now. Again, I think that's just like where they're placing it. And then in the future, they'll make an improvement to that to make it a little bit more unified with everything else going on here. But I think overall it's fine. I think they just could do another little cleanup of everything. You don't need to see all of this. I know some of you will say again in the comments, I want to see everything. And that is fair. There's a lot of information in EU5. But I think if you're just taking at a glance look at something, I don't really need to know like exactly how many people are in that country. I don't think so. Maybe I do though, and I'm just a bad player. Who knows? Anyway, for the rest of the dev diary, they're going to talk about battles and the UI around that. So you can see on the screen here, they did say originally the battle UI was not that good, and they have given it a fair bit of attention and iteration, and they believe it now is a lot easier to understand. Based on the playtesting they've had, they actually got some feedback that this makes battles a lot more fun to follow and see what's going on. So again, you can see it on the screen. You can see on the left-hand side, we have seen this previously. They have made some improvements, as they said. I think it is a little bit more legible now. I will say still, I don't like these brown boxes that are everywhere, but anyway, they will improve that in the future, I'm sure. But you can see the left flank, the center, the right-hand flank, and then you can see information around that. Like the little icons, it's kind of hard to see, but they are the units that are in there. You can see how many people are in each flank, what's going on, and then obviously on the right-hand side, you can see the actual battle itself and how well that's going, or in this case, how badly it's going. The Teutonic Order. And again, you can hover over certain things. You can see the left-hand flank, the possible frontage, who's here, and what they're getting up to as well. And again, this does show that left, center, right flank system that is in EU5. If you're coming from Crusader Kings 3, this actually used to be in Crusader Kings 2, but they got rid of it. They thought it didn't really make much sense in Crusader Kings. A lot of people didn't even know it existed because it was kind of hidden in the battle UI. You didn't see it by default. Obviously in EU4, you see this all the time, and it is coming back in EU5 as well. And I think it does look quite good here. Anyway, they're going to show us another screenshot here. This is the battle a couple of hours later, like in game time, not in real time. So you can see here the progress of this battle. He's pointing out here as well, similar to what I was saying earlier, some information is behind tooltips here. So you can hover over a certain icon that you can see, in this case, some infantry, and then it will do this pop-up. And you can see the unit type, Crusader Knights, their strength, their morale, what their dice roll was, their base damage, any modifiers they have, and other important things like discipline, the damage they've taken, what kind of unit they are, all those kind of things. So I like this. This is what I was talking about earlier. Maybe less things going on in the UI, but then you can hover over them, and the tooltip will then tell you the things that are there. I think this does work better. Let me know what you think in the comments. I actually like how this UI looks. I think it could have some improvements. But I think in general, like the layout of it is very good. You can see the reserves. You can see everything else going on as well. You can see those arrows. They're like the lanes of combat, the left, right, and center, obviously, as you go through the battle. And then next is going to show us the end of the battle, what happened. And you can see they've got some reserves still at the top. They've got, what, 2 infantry and some knights. And then the bottom army, well, they have nothing in reserve. Their right-hand side has just totally collapsed. You can see those arrows now. The top army, they've got those curved arrows. They're saying like that flank has been defeated, so I can now flank in and come in and attack the middle army as well. So that is going to help me in battle. You know, I can come in and attack them from the side. So I do like how this shows. The icons, I think, could be a little bit bigger. I guess if you have quite a high resolution UI, it could be quite hard to see some of these, but I'm sure we'll be able to scale it and all that kind of stuff. You can see the bottom army is surrendering. They're running away. The last thing they're going to show off is the war UI. And you can see here a massive example of this. This is the Teutonic Order versus Lithuania. And you can see at a glance, again, I do like UIs where at a glance you can see things. You can see the war score, how many attackers there are, their manpower, their ships. You can see some other stats as well. I'm not 100% sure what they are. The ones that are 0 and 0 on both sides, I'm not 100% sure what they're talking about. But then below that, you can see all the countries involved. You can see how their manpower is, their ships, also the morale of their armies. I'm not sure if I should be able to see that at a glance. I guess it makes sense because on the map, you would be able to see it. So I guess it does kind of make sense. You can see it here as well. And then you can see some other stats as well. Their war exhaustion. And then the last three ones, I'm not 100% sure what they're talking about. Somebody can let me know in the comments, I'm sure. But you can see 0, 0, and then a couple of percentage. Maybe that's like their war score from certain bits of combat. Anyway, doesn't matter. We'll get a dev diary about this in the future. But let me know what you think about this UI. I think overall it looks quite nice. I think it does need another round of like just making it look a little bit nicer. But I think the actual information that's shown is very good. You can see all the different participants, what they're getting up to. It might help you kind of focus on who you want to attack or something along those lines. And with that, guys, that is the end of the dev diary this week. Let me know what you think about it. I think overall, all these changes do look good. I think there are a lot of improvements here. I do think the UI still does need some more work, but I'm sure they know that as well. And then obviously we'll see that as we progress further and further closer to the release of this game and see what improvements they make. But anyway, that is the end today. They do say on Wednesday next week, Johan will be back talking about UI systems and how they work. So again, we might see some more UI improvements there. And then next Friday, not this Friday, the Friday after, we're going to get a Castile Tinto flavor, talking about Castile, the events they have, the content they have. So that's going to be a very interesting one. Obviously, a very historical country, a lot of stuff that they got up to. And we'll see some of that a week on Friday with Pavia. And then I guess we might be getting relatively close to the end of the Tinto flavors. I guess there are quite a few countries they've not talked about. Obviously, the big example is England that they've not talked about. But there are other countries. But they have gone through quite a few of them. I wonder when we will get that release date. Obviously, no release date in here today. I would have done this video a lot earlier if there'd been a release date in here. But let me know what you think about it all. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm covering all the news around EU5, and I also cover Crusader Kings 3 in a very similar manner. So if you play that game or you're interested in Crusader Kings, they've got a lot of DLC coming out soon. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening in that game as well that I am covering. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you all next time.